It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to call this meeting of the Chiillicothe City Council to order. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, council members, city officials, and our streaming audience. We have several important items on the agenda tonight, so we're going to move forward. And first, we would have the attendance roll called. So, clerk, please call the roll.
Bennett.
Present.
Payne. Nickerson.
Here.
Barnes.
Here.
McKeever.
Here.
Dement.
Here.
Henderson. Here. Kroll.
Here.
Creed.
Here.
I would now ask Councilwoman Nickerson to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The minutes from the previous meeting have been distributed. If there are no additions, deletions, or corrections, we would accept a motion to accept the minutes. If there are any corrections, please let me know.
I just have one correction under committee reports for safety service. We also discussed committee assignment 24-015. If that could be added, please.
Are there any other corrections or additions? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended? Mr. Creed, seconded by Ms. Bennett. Clerk will call the roll.
Bennett.
Yes.
Payne.
Yes.
Nickerson.
Yes.
Barnes.
Yes.
McKeever.
Yes.
Dement.
Yes.
Henderson. Yes. Kroll.
Yes.
Creed.
Yes.
Moving now to committee reports. Development Committee, Mr. Dement.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Development Committee has nothing on tonight's agenda. However, our committee convened earlier this evening to discuss Request 24018, which authorizes the renewal of a 15-year term easement for the City of Chiillicothe to maintain the city's storm drainage facilities located on the property of the Adina Mansion and Gardens. And we also discussed Request 24020, which allows for the city to prepare for its share of the ODOT Bridge Street 159 project by authorizing ODOT to do the work and establishes our city's agreement to maintain the project going forward. Both items will move forward to the Law Director's office, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Engineering Committee, Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Engineering has nothing on the agenda and nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance and Technology Committee, Mr. Prohl.
Finance has no items on tonight's agenda, and we have nothing to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Human Resources Committee, Ms. Payne.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Half of the agenda is ours this evening. Number 1 is a third read, and that's an ordinance establishing a pay scale for part-time, summer, and seasonal employees within the parks and recreation, swimming pool, engineering, utilities, administration, service department, police department, law director's office, human resources, and the auditor's department. I would ask for a favorable vote on this tonight. This is something we do each year at this time. We did increase some of these salaries to be very competitive this year. Number 2 is a third read on an ordinance accepting and adopting the Chiillicothe Transit Department's Title VI policies and procedures and declaring an emergency on that. And that is a request by ODOT to update that. Number 3 is an ordinance accepting and adopting Chiillicothe Transit Department's updated drug and alcohol testing policy. And also that is a request by ODOT to remain in compliance that needed to be updated. So those 3 items. I also have item number 5, and I am going to request that we table this item this evening. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Rec Committee, Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Parks, Rec, and Tourism has one item on tonight's agenda, which is a first reading of an ordinance adding section 505.19, feeding of wildlife prohibited to the codified ordinances of the city of Chiillicothe, Ohio. We have no other outstanding assignments at this time. A quick update on World Heritage. The Mound City visitors area has seen an increase of 60% already. So that is absolutely wonderful. Love to see folks coming into our community and visiting these historical locations. The Visitors Bureau has said almost all of their phone calls are related to World Heritage. So also very exciting. And we have a lot of different activities and events coming up. Check out the Chiillicothe, Ohio app for all of our events and information. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Safety Service Committee, Mr. Creed.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. First is the third reading of a ordinance accepting and appropriating a reimbursement grant for $21,331.50 for the police department for training that they conducted last quarter of last year. Next one is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating 2 different items. One is $4,813.80 for vehicle locator software for the police department. And the second one is $21,000 to cover their maintenance and annual fees. That one will keep for the 3 read. And then the next one is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating $25,000 for repairs to Chiillicothe Fire Department engine number 1, which is the primary engine for the city. And we'll let that go to the 3 read also. That's all.
Thank you. Utilities Committee, Mr. McKeever.
Thank you, President Shoemaker. Utilities has no items on the agenda tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. City Services Committee, Ms. Nickerson.
Thanks, President Shoemaker. We've received 3 different requests. I would like to gather more facts on assignment number 24023 regarding refuge fees request. The other 2, assignment number 24022 and 24024, I'd call a committee meeting Wednesday, March 27th at 5 regarding rental of the trolley and service truck repair. We have nothing on the agenda tonight, and that's all I have to report. Thanks.
Thank you. Community Affairs Committee, Ms. Bennett.
Thanks, President Shoemaker. We don't have anything on the agenda tonight, but we did meet earlier about the language about postponing and rescheduling meetings. We're going to change the language so that we have more flexibility, like Christmas Eve was on a Monday, Memorial Day is on a Monday, so that we can have a meeting either the week before or the week after. And that's the end of our committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move on to reports of officials. Mayor Feeney.
President Shoemaker, just want to offer my support of the items that are up for third read tonight. Would ask for council's favorable vote on those items. I'll just start my report tonight with a short statement. I don't know how well I will state my emotions or feelings on this, but many of you are aware that within the last week, hate speech flyers were posted throughout the city, cars, doors. We have every reason to believe this is done by somebody from out of town, but it's disgusting behavior. and I condemn it in the strongest words possible. I am very appreciative of our community, the relationships we have, the strength of our police department, the relationships that they have. I'm appreciative of the Ross County chapter of the NAACP, the relationship that they maintain with our police department. We know that behavior and emotions and thought like this exist in the world. But you would hope, or I would hope, that Chiillicothe would be insulated from it. It is not, and it is incumbent upon us to work harder and do better for the community. That's all I have on that matter. A couple other items that I'd like to report on. Little clarity, also social media news. A lot of questions today picking up the kids. Somebody said, is Gus Macker on or is it not? So I just want to offer some clarity on what's going on with Gus Macker. Most big downtown events, the city is approached and we coordinate a date or dates for a downtown event. Earlier this year, we were approached and we were told that Gus Macker was happening on the weekend of Mother's Day, Saturday and Sunday. We asked the organizers to report back to us and give us some updates on how many teams they had so that we could figure out which streets to close, if any. If you only have 4 teams, it seems the park would be appropriate. But we also know that Mother's Day weekend is one of the biggest shopping weekends and dining weekends downtown, so parking is a premium that weekend. No request for street closure was ever denied. We just wanted to make sure we were working with the organizers to make sure that we could handle their capacity. Last we knew they had 20 teams registered, but we're expecting up to 200. That's a wide gap, and it's about 60 days away or so. So we have every intent of helping the organizers of Gus Macker. I think it's been gone for 10 plus years, something like that, at least from downtown. We love to see events downtown. We think they're very beneficial for the community. But we also want to be very aware of the needs of downtown businesses and support both as we can. So looking forward to a good Gus Macker event and great weather that weekend for basketball players and moms alike. One more bit of sort of down news, and then I'll turn to some positive news. We've had 2 directors leave in the past few weeks. Brad Long has taken a job with Ross County Water. He's their new, I think it's called superintendent. He's the man in charge of Ross County Water. So I think almost 40 years with the city of Chiillicothe, worked himself up to director. I wish him luck on his new role. And Aaron Kennedy at Transit has taken a job as Fairfield County Transit Director, much closer to home for him, and I congratulate him on that move. Now for the positive news. We have been informed that both the House and the Senate have voted to approve 3 very significant congressionally directed spending requests from the city. The first is what's called the Marietta Road Lift Station. The best way I can explain this is that the city runs water and sewer all the way out to Kenworth and the hospital. To get it that span, it needs some help. And so the lift station that's at Marietta Road is in dire need of being replaced. And we received $2.8 million from the federal government to fund that replacement. Very significant. Otherwise, the taxpayers and the sewer users end up having to foot that bill. We received another $1.5 million for a housing project that we proposed. Both of these projects were supported both by Congressman Wenstrup and by United States Senator Sherrod Brown. Want to thank them both for all their support. And a third request that we put in was for design and construction work for Chiillicothe Park. All 3 of these came to some extent or another from all the public participation that came out of the comprehensive plan. And so this third one, the $900,000, which is one that Senator Brown supported as well, puts us at about $1.4 million in funds for Chiillicothe Park design, renovation, upgrades. And as many of you know, we are waiting with bated breath to hear the results of our application to the Appalachian Community Grant. We were supposed to hear the announcement today for how much we would get. That didn't happen. 62 some million was awarded to multiple counties for a school-based health clinic program, which is of course a good thing. I think that leaves something like 360 million of the original 500 to be divvied up. The majority of our request from the city and the number one request from the county was that request for the park. So we're very hopeful that we come through on that. But $5.2 million in congressionally directed spending was quite a victory for us. So I just want to thank all the staff that were involved in this request. Pretty big lift to get this in. And we actually just submitted this year's request this past Friday. So just want to thank Congressman Wenstrup, Senator Brown, and the staff that put all their time and energy into pulling these applications and awards off. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mayor Feeney. I want to report that I do not have a senior citizen team playing in the Gus Macker, so you can relax. There won't be as many injuries as there otherwise would be. Moving now to Auditor Spetnagel.
I do not have anything on the agenda tonight, but I do want to remind everyone that the city income taxes will be due on Monday, April the 15th this year. My office is open 7:30 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, so we are there to help you complete those forms if you need that help, and we'll be having extended hours that day as well. Other than that, that concludes my report. But the law director did ask me to let you know that she was not available tonight, but she did not have anything to report.
Thank you. Next, we'll move to audience participation. Any person wishing to address council must first provide his or her name and address. Comments shall normally be limited to 5 minutes. However, I have discretion to allow for more, and I have invited Adrian D'Souza, the president of the Ross County NAACP, to address us tonight, as well as anyone else who later then has any comments to make. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Feeney, President of Council, Mr. Shoemaker, council members, clergy, and everyone under the sound of my voice. My name is Adrian D'Souza. I live at 526 Laurel Street. I am the local president of the Ross County NAACP. I am an enrichment assistant at the Chiillicothe and Ross County Public Library, where I've worked for over 33 years and have the pleasure of saying that I will be retiring at the end of next month. I'm also very active in the community, serving on a couple organizational boards. On Sunday, March 17th, I was working at the Northside Branch Library in the afternoon, and around 3-ish, I started to see posts on Facebook about men from Trinity White Knights KKK who were circulating flyers that have all been seen by now in the West End. And if you haven't seen them, here they are. As I saw the post on Facebook, I immediately reached out to Mayor Feeney and Chief Myers to make sure they were aware. They both responded in a reasonable amount of time and assured me that they were aware and that the detectives were monitoring the activity. All afternoon on Facebook, people were making comments about how upset, frustrated, angry, and outraged they were. Several people reached out to me, including Pastor Moses Edwards Jr. of First Baptist Church, who happens to be my pastor, Reverend J. Troy Gray of Zion Baptist Church, William and Joy Renner, Dr. John Gabus, and members of the Ross County NAACP, just to name a few. On Monday, March 18th, I woke up early and I sent an email to Chief Myers requesting a meeting, which is nothing out of the ordinary. Chief Myers, Captain Short, along with my legal redress chair, Mal Payne, meet every so often to keep up to date on what's going on with the department. The purpose of this particular meeting was to find out more information about the presence of the Klan in our community. Chief Myers and Captain Short shared with us who this group was and how many members they have, how they target only one section of a city when they're in a city, passing out flyers, and they leave. They don't have a reputation of any violence or of destroying property. He shared that they worked along with Homeland Security to find out more information, and he also shared that they targeted neighborhoods in Portsmouth and Kentucky and West Virginia recently. I thanked him for the information, and then I asked if there was anything we could do when these groups come to Chiillicothe. I told him that I understand that they are covered under the First Amendment and freedom of speech, but I wanted to know if there was anything that we could do. I guess unless this group and groups like this cause bodily harm or vandalism, there is pretty much nothing we can do but monitor their activity. I know that we've had the KKK here before. I know that we have a local Klansman here because when I first started at the library in 1991, he would come to the library and he would leave those little tracts full of hatred throughout them. He still lives in this community. When the Klan had rallies years ago, he was one of them that was on the news. We have come too far in the struggle for civil rights in this country to go back to a time where we are not treated equally and looked upon as second-class citizens. And I don't care who was in the White House, and I don't care who is in Congress. We're not going back. We live in a pretty close-knit community here. We have our issues just like any other community: homelessness, crimes, and drug problems. We are divided by party lines just like every other community. But one thing about this community that I love is that we come together during times of crisis. I witnessed this firsthand during the pandemic. People, churches, organizations, and businesses came together to pool our resources and help one another. In a city as small as Chiillicothe, with a population of 21,805, where 85.2% of the population is white, 8.2% is Black or African American, 0.1 is American Indian or Alaska Native, and 0.3 is Asian alone. We pulled together to help anyone in need. When we had a lot of people who were experiencing homelessness, we pulled together thanks to Ross County Community Action and their partners. That is what we do here in Chiillicothe. So I'm going to end here, but before I do, I'm going to tell you what I'm thankful for, and then I'm going to ask a question for City Council. I am thankful that people didn't do what they were feeling on March 17th and take matters into their own hands. I am thankful that so many people reached out to ask what they could do, white, Black, and Asian. I am thankful that the men from this group didn't show up in the South End or in the East End, because it might have been a different story. I am thankful that each person in this room on this evening that came out to show their support, and they came out because it shows that they care about this community no matter what the color of their skin is. So City Council, my question for you is, what can you do to ensure that the likes of this group and groups like them don't come to our community and induce panic, spread hatred, and leave their ugly mark on our great city? Thank you.
thank you so much for your comments. The part that's most frustrating is the closeness of a community is probably what causes those people to target those communities because they want to divide and want hatred to triumph. And I'm just proud of the community also. And I know that all the members of City Council feel the same way, that this is just unacceptable behavior by folks. And we're awful proud of the things that everybody in this room does every day just to make sure that this is the kind of community where we want to live and raise our families. Anyone else like to comment?
Nancy Ames, 601 Oneida Road. Good evening to City Council, Mayor, elected officials, and the audience that is gathered here tonight. I am here tonight to address the issue of adding the position of Chief of Staff to the Mayor. When I became a member of City Council in 2007, there was the position of Chief of Staff under Mayor Salzer. I was in the administration office a lot of the time. Frequently, I observed the Chief of Staff with a lot of leisure time. When Jack Everson was elected mayor, we were in fiscal caution. City Council and the administration had a lot of meetings to determine which positions were essential and where the money could be put to the best use. At this time, the Chief of Staff position was eliminated. With this cut and others, the city was able to get out of fiscal caution. During the time when Jack Everson was mayor, I was head of the Development Committee. One of the biggest projects in recent downtown history that we completed, in partnership with the Adena Medical Center, was the renovation of the Carlisle building. This took countless hours of meeting. This was accomplished without a Chief of Staff. Mayor Feeney has not had a Chief of Staff since he took office in 2016. I am curious as to why now there is a sudden need for a Chief of Staff. I'm also confused as to the timing of this request. The budget for 2024 has been passed. Surely, if there's a great need for a Chief of Staff, this would have been presented to the City Council when preparing the 2024 budget. I would suggest that there are better ways to spend the city's money and that the City Council explore these options. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Dr. John Gabus, 22 Yaples Orchard Drive. When I saw the reports of the flyers being distributed, I didn't know what to do. But I knew nothing was not an option. I didn't want to call attention to it because it just builds on itself. But I can't let my friends who are African Americans stand by and be threatened by this. I still don't know what to do, but we have to do something. I don't know what the something is, but as a community, we cannot tolerate this. And we're better than this. Not us, but our whole community together. And at a meeting during Black History Month, Michelle Valentine gave a very moving speech on what it's like to grow up as an African-American woman in Chiillicothe. And she ended her comments with the admonition that you can do something. Reach out to an African-American neighbor. Reach out to somebody that you know who is an African-American member of our community and engage them in discussion and conversation. Hello is a really good way to start that conversation. And I hope you're okay is another good way to start that conversation. But to say nothing or do nothing is really not an option. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Well, I had this thought as Adrian was speaking.
You-
she asked, what can the council?
Excuse me, give your name and address,
Okay,
please. That's
Beverly
okay.
Wilkes.
Sorry.
156 Hanover Drive, Chiillicothe. Okay, I had this thought about when Adrian was speaking, and she posed, what can the council do? And I got to thinking, well, why can't we do some kind of declaration affirming racial justice and that we are against hate groups like KKK? That's just a thought I have.
Thank you.
My name is the Reverend Terry Williams. I reside at 47.5 East Main Street here in the city of Chiillicothe. And I just want to echo my support for Ms. D'Souza and those who've spoken about this matter. I think it's important also for the council to understand the historical background of these groups in our community. In 2016, this council took up in earnest a discussion of a non-discrimination ordinance. That was the last time that I recall these kinds of threats coming to our community, primarily from individuals from outside the community. But they came targeted at the community affairs chairperson at that time, who was Joshua Carty, a member of my congregation. Those threats also came to several committee members on different council committees, one Alicia Gray and one Joel Florima, two people of color who sat on this council. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we now have no persons of council in these 9 seats who are a person of color today. I think it's important also for us to recognize that in 2016, when those threats came, they became so severe at one point online that they caused the complete shuttering of a city council meeting due to fear and a desire to be more cautious than regretful. It was a very disturbing time for many of us, and some of us gathered anyway. Some of us gathered in a rally at the Ross County Service Center where the meeting was supposed to be held. We gathered in cooperation with the police department that came and made sure that it was a safe gathering. But we came and gathered anyway because we said it's not okay for threats to shut down the government of our city in this way. I'm a little frustrated and a little disturbed because I've recognized too, in those years, we have trimmed a lot of positions at the city. One in particular being the full-time position of EEO officer. I heard Mayor Everson invoked in this place, and I remember Mayor Everson cutting that position of EEO officer. And that didn't go very well in this city. People came out in mass, many more than are here tonight, to demand the reinstatement of that official, of Tamara Lowe at that time. The struggle that I have is that that position eventually became merged in with the HR office. It eventually became a smaller element of one person's position instead of a full-time position. It wasn't a community-wide position anymore. It was only internal communication. For me, when I hear this discussion about a chief of staff for the mayor, I can't help but hope that that position might be able to claw back a little bit of that community engagement, particularly around issues of race and issues of community diversity. When we sit here and ask the question, do we need this position? I guess that's already answered in our codified ordinances. The position is there. The question to you as city council members is, will you fund that position and hold this mayor accountable for making sure that that position does the kind of function that we see we so desperately need in this community? Ms. D'Souza is correct. We do not have the ability to quiet these individuals from having reprehensible views, but we do have the ability to put our money where our mouths are and positively educate this community about all the things that unite us and not the things that divide us. That's not too high a price to pay, especially when we have such a good carry forward, especially when we have so much in terms of resources now If we're going to invest money anywhere, I feel like investing it in that kind of administration and that kind of positive work would be a good step forward for this council to take. You know what you're able to do in this place. I pray you can do it. We're all counting on it.
Evening. David White, 179 Church Street. First off, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments and ask some questions regarding items on the agenda this evening. First, I'd like to address the second item, the ordinance updating the Title VI policy, and commend City Council and the City of Chiillicothe in ensuring that our policies and procedures that allow people who feel they may have been discriminated against have opportunity for redress and have procedures in place that are updated to reflect that. So thank you. In regard to the third item on the agenda, the drug and alcohol testing policy, I believe that that policy is fatally flawed in two regards. And I think primarily it's the result of the ballot initiative that was passed in this last election, which made recreational marijuana legal. As the drug and alcohol policy stands, an employee can be disciplined, can be fired, can be dismissed for a positive drug test when that person may be conducting perfectly legal behavior that the city potentially would have absolutely no interest in limiting or regulating. If a person behaves or takes on a Friday afternoon, if they have a drug test on a Monday morning, then there's no reason to believe that there's an interest in what they have done on that Friday and should not be punished for engaging in that behavior. The unique nature of marijuana, that it stays in your system for up to 30 days, ensures that it will have a different impact in that testing. And I think the language of the drug and alcohol policy does not take into account this new regulation that became effective as of December of 2023. And a second issue with the drug and alcohol policy is the list of safety sensitive functions that has been identified and included such positions as mechanic, secretary, and transit clerk as being safety sensitive operations which would subject those positions to a higher level of scrutiny and potentially additional testing beyond if they did not have that designation. So the inaccuracies in that list provided as attachment A of the policy, as well as the failure to acknowledge the impact of the passage of the ballot initiative, fatally flaws this policy, and I don't think that it should be passed. And I would urge all of council to vote against this, return it to committee to adjust and reflect those realities, and come back with a policy that acknowledges that. Next, although it's been scrubbed from the agenda, I would like to briefly comment on the second reading regarding the appropriation of $70,000 for the Chief of Staff. I would initially note the irony that in response to Mr. Creed's concerns at the last meeting, that somehow that funding would take away from the ability to fund and staff police and fire departments. It's somewhat ironic that there are three separate items on the agenda for this evening, totaling over $75,000 in funds for various reasons for the police and fire department. And in the interest of providing solutions and not just citing problems, I think one suggestion that we could make is we could find that $70,000 by eliminating a line item in the budget that provides that amount of funds. Last I saw, $60,000 to $70,000 for geese removal. totally unnecessary expenditure, not necessary for the state, for the city of Chiillicothe. And I'd encourage using that money for better purposes. And that brings me to the last of the agenda items I'd like to comment on. The first reading of the ordinance, section 505. This is creating a crime for feeding geese or intentionally feeding any form of wildlife, including feral dogs and cats, which are identified as vermin in the ordinance. First off, I think that's inaccuracy. To characterize feral cats as vermin is not the definition that I see when I look up what vermin are. The general purpose of this proposed ordinance, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community and its wildlife, is not furthered by criminalizing feeding geese in the park. The public health and safety is not adversely affected by either geese or people feeding geese. That's their habitat. So to suggest that it's enhancing their habitat and enhancing wildlife by prohibiting feeding them, it's completely contrary. I mean, there's a population of geese and ducks that are going to be at the park. I think we would be better served by enjoying them and appreciating them. When the geese eradication project was first discussed, it was originally described as targeted specifically to Canadian geese, and emphasis placed on the ability of the contractor to differentiate. But why was the fence protecting the swan nest and the actual nest itself removed from the park? And why, when there were 4 swans there previously, are there now only 2? Were they removed? Were they driven off? I think the effort to try to evict and eradicate animals that have just as much right to be in that park is wasteful of money, difficult, if not impossible, to enforce. Will we be spending time and effort having sheriff's deputies or city police patrolling the park to ensure that nobody's feeding geese? And how will the intent be determined in the reference under the prohibition that it shall be unlawful for any person to intentionally provide food or other sustenance to wild animals? I have a cat. I keep food outside for them. I know there's other cats that come and get it. Does that mean I'm intentionally feeding vermin? I think that this proposed ordinance is flawed in both its language and its purpose. Without any connection to any adverse health effects, any damage to public health or safety, there's no reason to create a crime out of feeding geese. And I would encourage council to return this to committee, and hopefully it would never see the light of day again.
Thank you. Any further comments?
Joy Renner, 322 Constitution Drive. My husband and I were, as Adrian said, very disturbed that, a couple weekends ago when the flyers were put on cars and homes of our friends. We have enjoyed living all of my life in this community, and my husband's since he moved here following a graduation from college. We were blessed working in the Chiillicothe City School System for 40 years and enjoying the diversity among our staff. That was so important, not just to only our enrichment, but it was so important to our students. They saw us get along, work together. That is so important. Upon learning about this a couple weeks ago, I did contact Adrian And then I contacted Jean Kearney. She was a councilwoman for many years here on City Council, and she is a good friend of ours. We talked for over an hour, both of us just aching in the pit of our stomach that somebody would try to infiltrate our community as we knew it and as we enjoy it. One of the things that Jean shared with me was that